Hi there guys, and welcome to The History Teacher. This is a very special teacher request episode. I hope you enjoy. Hi there guys. Today we're going to be looking at Imperialism and Colonialism in H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. Let's start by understanding what these words actually mean. So, imperialism and colonialism are closely connected. Imperialism is a policy where a country extends its power and influence by taking over other countries using military force or economics or any other means. Colonialism, on the other hand, is the actual practice of taking over full or partial control of another country, then occupying it with settlers and exploiting it for their profit. Simply put, imperialism is the policy that a country will invade and occupy other countries for its own gain, while colonialism is how imperialism is put into practice. There have been loads of countries throughout history who've had a policy of imperialism. They've colonized countries to create an empire. These include the Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, the Spanish Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. However, today we're going to be focusing on the British Empire because that is what H.G. Wells is talking about in the War of the Worlds and was the largest empire at the time that Wells was writing. Before we begin, let's have a very quick and incomplete history of the British Empire. So the British Empire began way back in the 16th century when England was trying to compete with richer and more powerful countries like Spain. At the time, Spain was colonising the Americas, and England wanted some of the wealth and resources that were being shipped back to Europe by the Spanish. So, in 1585, an English colony was founded in Roanoke in what is today North Carolina. Over the next few centuries, England expanded its empire to include much of North America and the Caribbean islands. And then from 1600, the English turned to the east and began to set up trading posts in India. This was a key development for England because the goods brought back from India, including silk and spices, were incredibly valuable in Europe. In the 1660s, England expanded into Africa and began the human slave trade, where human beings were bought or kidnapped and then transported to the Americas, where they were sold and exchanged for the valuable sugar and tobacco crops grown in the south. Into the 1700s, and England became Britain, with the Act of the Union bringing Scotland into the Empire in 1707. The trade of humans for slavery continued to grow and became immensely valuable. However, by the time Wells wrote his books in the 1890s, the trade of human beings had been banned in Britain. That did not stop Britain expanding ever onward though throughout the 19th century. Britain conquered and colonised New Zealand and Australia and large parts of Southeast Asia. It then continued to claim large parts of Africa for its own, and by the time Wells wrote The War of the Worlds in 1895, Britain oversaw the largest empire the world has ever seen. Throughout the 19th century, the educated middle class became more and more uncomfortable with the actions of the British. Sympathy had increased for the native people of the lands that the British had colonised. The campaign for the abolition of slavery in the first part of the century is a good illustration of this. The War of the Worlds tells the story of an invasion of Earth by a Martian force, who are far advanced in terms of technology and intelligence than the people of Earth themselves. These Martians set about killing the humans in order to take the Earth and its resources for themselves. This is a clear metaphor for the actions of the British Empire in countries where their technology and tactics could not compete with the advanced weapons and organisation of the British. Wells makes no secret of the connection. In the very first chapter he writes, "And before we judge them too harshly, we must remember what ruthless and utter destruction our own species has wrought, not only upon animals such as the vanished bison and dodo, but upon its inferior races. The Tasmanians, in spite of their human likeness, were entirely swept out of existence in a war of extermination waged by European immigrants in the space of 50 years. In this, he is referring to the so-called Australian Black War of the 1820s, in which the British, along with other European nations, systematically killed, raped and enslaved the entire native Tasmanian population and caused their near extinction. The humans in the story are forced to use guerrilla tactics to try and fight the superior power, but they are ultimately doomed. In fact, the artilleryman tells the narrator in chapter 7, "It never was a war, any more than there's a war between man and ants," showing that the humans stood no chance against the Martians. Wells believed that this was inevitable when a population came up against such a power. Okay, that's it for today. I hope this has helped to explain H.G. Wells' metaphor for empire in the War of the Worlds. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. I always reply as quickly as I can. And don't forget that if you like my content, I really appreciate it if you could buy me a coffee to keep me going. That's everything for today. See you next time.